Good evening. My name is Brian Bobbitt. I'm a Project Lead the Way Master Teacher from Evansville, Indiana. We're very excited to offer our first Fusion training.
As part of our team, we have also Craig Hughes is here. Craig and I've been fortunate enough to teach with him twice now, which is really nice. Craig will kind of be monitoring the chat with Austin. Craig, do you want to say anything real quick?
I just wanted to say happy to be here and help Brian out, and anybody who has questions or anything like that, we're able to, you know, just try to give you some support and hopefully answer some questions that are burning, especially as you've gone through the school year and you're like, all right, I'm not really sure why we're seeing some of the things happen that we do.
Sure thing. Thanks, Craig. I'm glad you're here. And here is Austin as well. Austin, do you want to say anything?
This training session is great because we're hitting the things in Fusion, especially if you're doing IED, that you hit in core training and you haven't done for 8 months now. And so you're like, you even forget how to do some of those higher advanced features. So I think the timing of this is great. I'm going to throw it there. I am going to stick around later. So as we're going through this, if we want to do some breakout sessions and people got to go, but I'm willing to stick around. So if you've got some questions like and ready in the barrel, we can make sure we hit those tonight, or for at least for most of you before you guys leave.
Great. So a couple of quick things right off the bat. We, with Project Lead the Way, not all of you are Project Lead the Way. Some of you are just here to learn about Fusion. You're a hobbyist, or some of you teach overseas even. Project Lead the Way is a pre-engineering education program here in the United States. Our goal is to really increase those that go into engineering programs and have them be successful at the university level. There are many strands to Project Lead the Way as well. So they have like a biomed, and they have a middle school program, a computer science program. It's a really well-versed program, and even now they're getting into an algebra program. So here's kind of our agenda tonight. I want to give you like just kind of the basics of Fusion, how to deal with a general process, how to get started with it. I'm assuming there are a lot of educators in here tonight, so kind of developing that process for students. Go through some navigations. We'll do some actual Fusion, like revolutions, constraints. Hopefully by the end of the night, we're doing some basic assemblies. My goal when I designed this training was just to kind of think of it like a little kid when you had the building blocks and you just started building things, putting them together. So we're going to kind of take that focus tonight. If you are interested, this is a class I developed for Autodesk actually, and it's called Learn Fusion for CAD in 90 minutes. If you click that picture, it will take you through, it's basically a tumbler design. That's why you see that in the picture. But it takes you through the sketching process, the extrusions, the renderings. I mean, it takes you through the whole gamut. If you use that, please let me know, though. I'm kind of interested in getting some feedback on that as well. All right, so here's the basics of Fusion. Couple of things right off the bat that you got to ask yourself. Is it a body or is it a component? And then some of you are like, I have no idea what either one of those mean. What are you talking about? Then we're going to get into where we create a sketch. So just a two-dimensional sketch. So picture that with graph paper, right? And then we'll teach a little bit about how to apply some constraints. And constraints are basically us telling it that we want it to be perpendicular or parallel, or we want certain dimensions on it. We need it to be certain sizes. And then we'll show you how to make it three-dimensional. And then we'll go through some basic assemblies. So without further ado, let's talk about that body and component thing. Bodies are basically a series of sketches and extrusions put together. The deal is with a body, you're looking like a one component, one piece, one part. When you get into components, like you see over here on the right, you see there are multiple parts now that we're going to start kind of putting together in an assembly. With components, you can apply joints to them. So you can say, I want this to be attached to this, or if it's a wheel and an axle, I want it to be able to revolve. I want it to be able to spin. Okay, so components and bodies are kind of like that. We're going to create a body. We're going to create this basic cylinder. Okay, so this is going to be one of our building blocks tonight. So you can see here, I did leave some step-by-step directions for you, but I'm also going to just show you how to go through this. Here is a bit of Fusion. Let me slide it on over here. What I'm going to do is just start a brand new drawing. So I'm going to go up here to the new. So file and new design. And then I'll say new sketch right over here. So I click that in, and then I'm going to click one of these work planes. That's what we call these. These are basically which sheet of paper do I want to draw on. So think of, I've got 3 ortho paper, so the old XY graph paper. But I want to start here, here, here. Eventually, you're going to get in all 3 of them anyway because you're drawing in 3 dimensions. So what I'm going to do is I'll just pick this plane. So now you can kind of see I've got an origin. And up top here in my Create tab, so Create, I have several different things. I have lines, I have rectangles, circles, and then this allows me to do different splines, so curvy lines. Right now, we're just keeping it simple. So I'm going to take this circle, come down here to the origin, click my mouse, and then just move the mouse out. Now you notice as I go through there, there's actually a number there, right? I can size that with my mouse, or if I know, hey, this thing's got to be exactly 2 inches, I can just press 2 on my keyboard and then press enter. So now I know that that circle is 2 inches. So from here, I will click either here, I can click finish sketch, or up here in the dark, or excuse me, the light green check mark, I could click finish sketch. Either way, I'm going to get to the same place. So I'll click that. Now you notice up here, the Create tab changes a little bit. So I'm going to choose Extrude here. And Extrude is a fancy way for saying, let's make it 3D. So we're going to get into that 3-dimensional realm. I can drag the arrow here. Notice if I drag this way, it's a positive number. If I go the other direction, it still extrudes, it's just a negative number. So think about your number line, right? So I'm going to come out this way, and I'm going to make this 4 inches. So I can continue to drag it. And this is what, like if you're a teacher, this is what your kids are going to do at first. They're going to just use the arrows, which makes sense. Or they could just type it in and say 4 inches. And then when I get it there, I'm going to click OK over here. So now I've made a 3-dimensional shape. So when I'm working in the classroom with my kids, this is probably the very first thing I do. Was I show them this, and they're going to ooh and ah about it because they just made a circle 3-dimensional. But it gets better. There's more, right? So down here at the bottom, we have it's called a navigation panel. I use this orbit tool. I could click that, and then I come up here and hold my click and move the mouse, and that rotates the shape. Okay. I don't know if you noticed this, but up here in this top right corner here, as I'm rotating, this thing is moving as well. So check this out. See how it moves with us? This thing up here in the top right is actually called a view cube. You could click and hold on it and drag it as well. You could also use that, though, to square up a view. I maybe just want the right side of it. Here's the home button. So if I click that, it kind of square or centers everything up and gives me an isometric view of it. Also down at the bottom is the pan tool. So it looks like the hand, we call it the hamburger helper tool in my room. So you can click that, click and hold, and you can kind of drag the shape around the screen. If you have a scroll wheel in your mouse, you can click and hold that as well, and it'll give you the same effect. I glanced over the look at tool because this is a cylinder, but if you click that look at tool and then you click a flat surface, it squares it up for you. Okay, so if I get all weird and rotated crazy, I can use that look at tool and square up. Over here, I'm sure you can kind of figure out, here we've got a zoom tool. This is not really helpful with a real mouse. If your kids work on that touch screen, like a Chromebook or a laptop, that's a handy little gizmo to have. If you just want to zoom in on an area, you can click fit. You can also click the down arrow and say zoom window and draw like a little box in the area you really want to focus on. Right. Next door, let me get back to the home view. Next door neighbor here is the display settings. So I could say for visual style, maybe I don't want these edges to be black lines. So I'll go to visual style and just say shaded. So it kind of went away. With students, I tend to leave that into where it says shaded with visible edges. I think they do a better job at the beginning of just seeing what edges work really well. Let's look at the block set here. So right there, the lines are really handy now. But if I just turn that off, visual style, and just say shaded, it's still the same shapes, but they're not as defined, I guess. There's also wireframe. So for some of you that came from the AutoCAD world, wireframe will make a little more sense to you. You can also change a few other things. Here's the thing I would suggest though. This stuff, it may seem arbitrary to us if you are working with students at all, or you are a rookie at this stuff. Learning how to move in CAD is a huge deal. If we don't know how to rotate an object to see different sides of it, it's going to be a hard go of it with CAD. And that's not just Fusion, that's any CAD program. Whether I know some of you are Onshapers, and we've got some SolidWorks out there and some Inventor, but you know as well as I do that if you can't get to different sides, it makes it kind of tough. Spend some time with the rotational stuff. You can also go here to grids and snaps, and you can change your grid settings in sketch mode. We may talk more about that in a little bit. So let's take a look at just the cylinder. Did anybody try to make the cylinder? How did it come out for us? Pretty simple stuff. I always started the kids there because I know they're going to be successful with that. All right. Next up, what I would do is I would take them a little bit further and I'd say, all right, so we need to get back to that body component discussion, right? Because at the end of the night, we're going to try to create these pieces here on the screen and put them together. What we created in Fusion right now is considered a body. In order for us to use that in an assembly, we're going to have to make it a component. Okay, so what I would do with bodies here, I can kind of expand the bodies folder and the bodies area here, and I can right click on body one, and I could just say create components from bodies. Okay, so watch what happens over here though. Right now I have body and body one. As soon as I do this though, right click and say create components from bodies, I don't have any bodies now, and it turned into a component. When you're doing assemblies, your kids, they struggle with that. They struggle with the body component thing. Next up, what I would do is I would do my next component, and I would go up here to the Assemble tab. And this is how I would typically start with a drawing. I would say new component, so I don't have to deal with it. So I can just say new component. For component two, we'll just call it a rectangle. Right, and then I'll click OK. And it's really the same process. So I've said new component. Now I click new sketch, just like we did before. And I'm going to pick a work plane to work in. And I'll pick a different one this time. Notice I use my pan tool. I click the wheel of my mouse, and that allows me to slide the screen around. I'm going to choose a rectangle tool, and just anywhere on the screen, I'm going to make a rectangle that's 2 inches by 2 inches. And I'm going to extrude that, so I'll make it 3-dimensional to be 4 inches. So I'll click Finish Sketch, and then I'll go to Extrude, and I'm just going to drag the arrow until I get to 4 inches. I'm lazy, so rather than drag the arrow, I'm just going to put a 4 in the box. Now notice over here on the browser though, remember component one? That's a cylinder, isn't it? So if I see that little radio button, that little circle by it, if I need to get just that one, I can click the circle, the radio button by it. If I need to get back to that rectangle now, I can kind of highlight it and click the circle by it. And I can edit that thing again. I can work with it again. If I want to see them both, I go up here to the top of that. Right now mine's unsaved. So I'll click that radio button. And now notice both of them are active. And that allows me to move them both around. If this were just a body, these would not be independent of each other. Okay, so later on, when we start putting all these blocks together, we would need these to be separate components. I did put a navigation video in here for you. Unfortunately, you'll get to hear my lovely voice again, but it is there, and I use it with my kids, especially at the beginning of the year, and just say, all right, I want you to kind of go through this so you know how to rotate things, how to change so I can get to a side of something. Like I've got a cube on the screen and I want to just rotate it to a side and see that, I can do that. That video is just there to kind of help you out. Let's move into another concept that I would get to pretty quickly with my kids, and that is a revolution. So with a revolution, we're looking, I tend to do like a lot of cylinder kind of objects with these cups, that kind of stuff. So I do have a few rules though that I try to get to the kids, that we need an axis, that we need to close the shape, and we don't cross the lines. So we need an axis, we have to close the shape, and we don't cross the lines. Let's take a look at that. So I'm just going to kind of start a new drawing. I don't know if you noticed, but up here at the top, there's these little plus signs. It's very similar to like Chrome, right? Or an internet browser. So I'll just hit the plus and that opens up a brand new design file for me. And then I think I'll go ahead and get in that habit, right, of saying new component. And I'm just going to call this a cup. And I'll click OK. So that's eventually what I'll tell my kids is let's go to new component first, and then let's start sketches. So I'm going to start that sketch. I'm going to pick any plane, and I'm going to choose the line tool, which is up here at the top. I don't know if you know this, but Fusion has a lot of built-in shortcuts. There are certain keys you can press, and that saves you from a couple of clicks. Like extrude, if you press the E key, that'll go straight into extrude. Like on line, if you press the L key, it'll pull up the line tool. For now, I'll just stick with clicking the icons. So I'm going to start. I have a habit of always starting at the origin. I would highly recommend that as a rookie. I'm just going to draw a line straight up. That's going to be my axis. Then I'm going to draw over. I think I'll come down, and I'm just kind of playing right now. Let's do something like this. And I'm going to close that shape off. So notice, see how it turned light blue on me? That means it's closed. There's no openings. Let me show you an open. See how we've got a break there. First, you can see it there, but also there's no light blue. So you know that it's not closed off. I'm going to click Finish Sketch because I've got my profile sketch. That's what this is called. And I'll say Finish Sketch. Now up here next to Extrude is the Revolve. Okay, so I'll click Revolve in. Fusion is very intuitive, and it says, hey, man, did you mean to click this for a profile? Why, yes, I did. I sure did. For my axis now, I'm going to click that line I started with. So now I'm going to rotate that and just kind of move it around and see what I've come up with. That is craziness. If I want to get really crazy, here's another free one for you. It's a shell tool. So I'll click shell and it's on the modify tab. And then I'll click right here on the face of that. I'm just going to drag that in just a little bit. Okay, that's actually a whole lot. I'm going to try like a 0.01 and click OK. And what shell does is it made that thing a cup. Okay, so shell basically hollows it out. For real fun, you could click shell on the top and on the bottom. Let me show you what that looks like. So while we're here, here's the undo button, by the way. So I'm going to undo that shell. I'll click shell again, and I'm going to click the top and rotate it around, and then click the bottom. Well, this is going to work well. There it goes. So now if I click OK here, you're going to notice the bottom and the top have been shelled out. Okay, now I got to be honest with you. I don't know that you make a ton of practical parts that way, but the kids sure do love it. It gets them excited about it. It's kind of one of those motivational hooks for them. Okay. Like I said, I'm not sure there's a great deal of wealth in it, but it's a good little tool to be able to use. Craig, Austin, what do you think? Do you guys use Revolut a lot?
Yeah, we use a lot of Revolut for any kind of, like Brian kind of hit it on the head, cylindrical parts, axles, any sort of little connector pieces, things like that. So it's a pretty neat advanced kind of modeling feature that you can use to create a lot of really cool parts that would maybe also, you could think of anything you would turn on a lathe or any sort of round cylindrical parts that are symmetrical would be a great use of the using Revolve.
All right, so I want to talk to you now. Let's get into some elementary constraint levels. There's actually three types. There's geometric, there's dimensional, and there's parametric. I don't think we're ready for parametrics yet, but I can show you some geometric, and we're definitely going to show you some dimensional because that gives you some control. What you see on that slide that's on your screen, that is a few constraints put together. You can see this symbol here, the circle with the line. That is a tangent constraint. So I'm gonna put a few lines on the screen and kind of show you how these work. And then we'll show you some dimensionals as well. All right, I'm gonna start anew, and I'm just gonna pull up a sketch so I can show you, well, let's do it right. Let's do new component. And I'm just gonna call this thing practice. I will say though, if you know that you're not going to make an assembly out of something, like it's going to be one piece, they could go straight into sketch mode. But I've noticed that humans are creatures of habit, myself included. So I always try to say, let's go to new component first and new sketch. Now, if we continue to have webinars like that, there are some other things you can do that can change that process up a little bit. But for now, let's just keep it simple. So I'm going to go into sketch mode. I'm going to take this circle, and it's just a random circle, and I'm going to pick, I don't know, let's pick a square. So I got a square here. So over here in the middle-ish top of your screen it's the constraint tab. So we can make things horizontally and vertically correct. We can use a coincident, we can use tangent. You know what? Rather than me just going through it, let me show you. So I think I'm going to try to make this coincident. So I'm going to say the center point, and let me put it on that line. See how it kind of lined them up for me? Now, on the circle, I can actually kind of move things around. I can drag those around and move them in every which way. I'm going to undo that. This time, I'm going to take that circle, and I'm going to just kind of put it inside here. But what I need is I want that circle to touch every edge. So I'm going to use the tangent constraint up here. I'm going to click the circle on each side. Look at that. That's tangent. Do the same on all four sides. Okay, so now you can see I have a tangent constraint. So that circle and that square are tangent on all sides. But now that they're actually constrained to each other, like they have a relationship now. Now, when I move one shape, the other shape is going to stay with it because I said, hey, I want these to always be tangent. Same thing with a line tool. So I've got a line here, and let's take one here. Now, those lines don't have a whole lot in common. But I can say I want those to be parallel. So I'm going to say this line, and then click this line, and now they are parallel. And I might want them to be equal. So I could click here, say you and you, and now they're equal. There are a lot of constraints up here. Some that I've noticed that we use more often than not. Definitely the horizontal vertical one, coincident, and tangent. I mean, I use them all, but I noticed Fusion, our Autodesk people made it pretty smart there. They tend to work left to right, and your more common ones are going to be toward that left area. You'll use some of those from time to time.
Hey, Brian,
Yes, sir.
how do you remove the constraints?
Okay. You can actually just click on them. See how they're there? You can click on them, and you can actually right click and say delete. So you might have to zoom in a little bit on them.
You also need to make sure that in your panel at the top that, so Brian, if you would select a geometric constraint,
Yeah.
just one of them up there. Anytime you have a running geometric constraint that's active, you'll notice it's highlighted in blue. Any command you have running is always highlighted in blue.
Mm-hmm.
So in order to select those, you need to actually either select escape, or you can right click and select cancel to stop running that command. And then that'll allow you to select and I kind of put that in the chat, the little glyph, that's kind of what they refer to it as, but the little icon that's on the whatever geometry that you have.
Outstanding question. And I'm glad you asked. You'll use those from time to time. And I've noticed as the kids get better and as people get better at CAD, they will do a lot more with geometric constraints. At the beginning, most of the kids keep it with dimensional constraints. So let me show you what those look like. Here's kind of where we're headed so that you know. We're going to make this little cube is a 2-inch cube. And those holes that are in there, those are 1-inch diameter holes, and they are centered. So at the end, this is kind of what we're going to end up with. So we're going to enter a 2-inch cube with 1-inch holes through every side. That's where we're going. Let me start a new one. All right, what should I do first? Right, new component. Go to new component, and I'm just going to call it cube. And click OK. The next step really should be to save. So up here at the file, up in this area, we'll click save and we'll give it a name. And I'm just going to call it cube. And then notice in your locations here, you actually have folders. And we're going to get to those in just a minute. You have folders that you can save them in, and you can keep things organized. Okay. So now I've got a file name up here. You notice also over here on the left, it's already throwing that file name in for me. All right. So I'm going to go to sketch now and pick any of the sides. I'm going to start with a rectangle and just start right there at the origin. I can use my mouse and make it 2 by 2, or let's play like I just blundered and boom, that's not 2 by 2. That's okay. So what I can do is go up here to the create tab, and there's dimension. Just like extrude, I can press the E key and go straight to extrude. I can also press the D key and go straight into dimension. Pretty handy. So I'm going to click on this line and just move my mouse out. There it is. It's 1.1, blah, 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 blah. I'm just going to make it 2. I type a 2 in. Notice it takes both sides. Now I'm going to click either the top or the bottom line. And I'm also going to make it 2 as well. Okay, so I've got a 2-inch square. That right there. And again, I tell you what, this is mouse movement stuff that will get your kids. It's like, all right, I've clicked dimension in, I've clicked this line, now what? Or I can't get it to stop. Where do I get it to stop? How do I make it stop? So you just got to click. And then you can change it over to whatever. Now, if you checked Austin's line in the chat, he said fully constrained is black, partially constrained is blue, and green lines are fixed, and purple, blah, blah. Purple is projected. So all of these lines are black. That means this is a fully constrained object. They're going to stay with each other is basically how I would explain that to a rookie. They're going to stay with each other regardless of what I do. So I can click finish sketch or finish sketch, But this time what I'm going to do, because we're getting more advanced now, I'm going to press the E key on my keyboard. So as I do that, I want you to watch the menu up here in the create and the modify area here. I'm going to press E, and look how it changed. Changed perfect, and I'm already in extrude now. So I can drag the arrow, and I know it needs to be a 2-inch cube. So therefore this is going to be 2. So I'm perfect. I've got a cube. So I'm going to go back into sketch mode now, because remember what we're doing. We're creating this, right? We're creating this shape. So I'm going to go back in there. I'm going to go to sketch, and I'm going to click on any of these sides. Doesn't matter, because I'm going to do it to all of them. I'll just start here. And I'm going to take the circle tool, and I want to put that in the middle. Now, if you notice, as I slide down this line, Fusion puts a square at an end point. And if I move down this line, it turns from an X to, there's that midpoint symbol, that triangle. And if I do the same thing to one of the vertical lines, and now I bring them both over, look at that. It centers it up for me. I got a hidden line, or a dashed line for both of them. And I'll just click there, and I'll draw the circle. And this circle is supposed to be 1 inch. Now I'm done with the sketch. I can press E, go to extrude, click that circle. Now remember, I can go out with it, or I can go backwards with it. So I'll click OK. Now I'm going to do one more. So I'll go back into sketch. So notice there's a process here. Every time it's sketch, then click the plane I want to draw on, or the face, or the side. And I'm going to take my circle again. Oh, doggone it. I got off centered there. So, you know what I can do? Watch this. I can take the dimension tool, and I can say, all right, from this side to the center. And then I can move it up or down. So from that edge to the center point, and then I come down here and click somewhere. I need that to be 1. And it'll move it for me. Or maybe I can say, well, I don't know if it's centered top to bottom now, so click here and here. And that one looks pretty good, but I'll just make it be 1 for sure.
Hey Brian, go back real quick for me. Hit undo, or make that circle undefined again. My big thing that I found out is how to help students figure out what do you need to do to make this fully constrained. So at this point, I tell them, grab the circle and drag it. What can you do with it that you shouldn't? And that is the dimension you're missing. So right now, the circle, we know how big it is. We know its X value. Now we need to know its Y. But trying to get students to see that can be hard. So I tell them, if it's blue and you want it to be black, drag it, and then you know what's wrong with it.
Very good insight too, Austin. You notice I can drag it up and down, but I can't. I mean, I'm trying. I can't go left and right with it. And that's because it's actually constrained left and right. Left and right, it's said to be, hey, it's only 1 inch. So what I'll do is go ahead and fully constrain. So I'm going to go from the top to the center, I guess, and just say 1. From here, I can finish sketch and extrude, or I can just press E and just slide it on through. Okay, here comes the curveball. You ready? This time I'm going to do it one more different way. Instead of doing a circle, look at where I'm at. I'm in the features menu. I'm going to click the whole command right here. So I'm going to click that, and I'm just going to say, all right, well, I need a hole right here. And I'm going to kind of drag this around, and I don't know if you see that, but do you see that white dot right there? It'll be right in there, okay? So as I move this around, it snaps to it. So I've got that hole in there. I think I need to redo that part now. There we go. There's that white dot, and there's it centered. So I know that that is dead center. It's 1 inch from the edges on both ways. Okay, but if it's not right here, the references, so I can say, you know, from here I need to be 1 inch. And then from here, I need to be 1 inch. Now the hole, I want the extents right here instead of a distance there. I want to click that and just say all. So this hole is going to go all the way through. Okay. And then for my diameter down here, instead of 1, well, actually, that's perfect. I want it to be 1. So if it's not 1, I'll just change it. All those are still set, so I'll just click OK. My kids, they like color. If I'm a newbie at this, I want color. I'm tired of looking at the gray already. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to press the A key on my keyboard, and that'll pull up appearances. Okay, so here's paint. There's plastic. There are woods. There are stones. There's all kinds of stuff. Maybe I just want it to be like a mahogany finish. So I'll just drag that over. Except I don't have, see these little icons right here? That means you have to download it. Okay. I don't want to waste our time. So I think what I'll do is just, let's go with like just a glossy paint. I'm going to drag the blue over, and now it's blue. Now, just a note, these are just appearances. Okay, if we want actual physical properties, like if we want to turn it to gold or lead or something, so we can have the kids do like a material analysis kind of thing on it, then we can do that as well. And let me go ahead and show you that part. So here's our cube. I can kind of right click on the title right here. And I can go down, and there's one that says physical material. And here's appearance. That's where where I see that A right there. That lets you know that that's the shortcut key to it. Okay. But if I want a physical material, so I want it to have like the mass and the density and the volume properties, right? Maybe I want metal. And let's just take an aluminum. So a 6061, some nice stuff. I'll just drag it over. Now, when I take a look, so I've got aluminum on there. When I take a look here at the properties, right here, so I right clicked again, and I said properties. Now, when I take a look, it takes a second to pop up. When I take a look at that, it gives me the mass, the volume, density, and area. So in my classroom, if I want to grade kids and I want to know that they use the exact dimensions I gave them, I will have them show the part just like this, and also I'll have them pull this up as well. This lets me know, because if any of these numbers are different, then it lets me know they messed up somewhere in a dimension, right? Especially with volume and area, because those are very geometric. If I messed up a dimension, my area and volume are not going to be right. Now, mass and density, that's related to the material. So kind of depends on what focus you want to take. That's the cube. And the reason I show you that though, is because it's a constrained dimension, okay? And that's a very common type of dimension. Here's a bonus activity that we do that combines revolutes and dimensioning. If you're interested in doing more of that, like if you want to do this yourself to try it out, right down here is a walkthrough video. It'll take you step by step through that process. Unfortunately for you'll get to hear my lovely voice again, though. Let me tell you how to make this arc here. Because if I look at this, all these are just lines. You know, I can make lines. But that arc tool, I don't know much about that. Let me show you that one. All right, let's take a look at that cup, though. I'll give you a brief run over of it. So maybe I need this line to be 5 inches. So I can do that as I'm making the line. I'll carry this over. Let's make that 2.75. And I'm just going to use the L key to activate line. And I'll go down. Let's do 0.75. And now I'm going to come down this way and say, let's go out 1.5. That looks good. And let's go up 0.5. Using the line tool again, I just pressed L. Come over and I'll say, let's make this 0.75. But let's make the angle instead of 180. So I hit the tab key on my keyboard. That goes to the next And I say, you know what? Instead of 180, let's do like a 210. Oh dear, that went down. I better try something else. Let's go 160. That looks better. So now I'm going to use the line tool. I'm going to come up and I'll say, let's just do 1.25. All right, so I've got things here and I want this part to be the arc. So here's what I'm going to do. I'll go up to the create. Look at this. You can click the word. So what I did is I actually clicked create and you see line, rectangle, circle, all that stuff. Check this out though. Rectangle, you click on that. There are other kinds of rectangles you can use even. Okay, there's a whole lot more here, but simple. I want to keep an arc. There's arc. I have 3-point arc, center point arc, and tangent arc. I use these top two quite a bit. I'll say 3-point arc. So 1 point is that point. And then I'm going to move my mouse down and click the second point, which is down here. My third point will be the bend. Okay, so maybe I want it to be like this. And check this. I can choose dimension. And I can actually dimension the arc as well. So instead of 4.4286, whatever, maybe I just want it to be 4. There it is. So just by clicking dimension, I can constrain all of that. So I'll finish the sketch and I'll do a revolve, click the axis, and boom.
Does that R stand for radius?
Correct. It sure does. Yeah. Good. So if you're interested in learning more about how to do that in a little more detail, like I said, there's a walkthrough for you. I kind of want to move to this where we start making some blocks. What I've done for you so that you can focus more on the assembly is if you click this picture here, you will actually get access to this file. This is going to be a neat process for us. Let's see how this goes. So here's the presentation again. If I click this picture, there's a link right here that says 3D Champion block set. So I click that, it's going to take me straight to that, or take Austin's link, either one. When I get here, I'll choose download. As soon as I choose download, that'll take it to my computer. Now let's go back into Fusion and how do I deal with this? Now some people, what they'll do is they'll just double click it. So like here it is, I'll just click it and open it. What that will do is load up another program of Fusion. If your kids already have Fusion open, or if you already have Fusion open on your computer, it's going to load up another version of Fusion. You know, if you continually do that, it's going to bog down your system. Okay, but when I do that, it does look like this. I mean, it pulled it straight up. Let me show you another way to deal with that, though, that's a little nicer to your computer. So I'm going to close that out before it freezes us all up. All right, so here's the Fusion I had open. To get this side open, do you see right here? We always call it, well, I do because I got the southern part of Indiana. I call it the waffle. Okay, but the true name is the data panel. This thing right here. So you've clicked on the data panel, and that'll pull this side up. Yours probably will look a little bit more like this, where it'll say like admin project, default project, all this kind of stuff. I have a lot more folders because I've been doing this a little bit longer, but what we'll do here, I would say that let's go ahead and set up a new project. A new project's basically like saying we're going to put a folder in. So I'll say new project. And we're just going to call this Fusion Night 1 or whatever else you want to call it. But we'll call it something that we can remember, and we'll press enter. And then we'll actually go in there. And you notice it alphabetizes it for us. So we'll go in there. So double click to go in. And now we're going to say upload. So right here is upload. And that file is in our download. But for me, it's in our downloads. So to get here, I made that folder. Then I went in it and I said upload. Select the file. And then you can double click it. Make sure, again, just give it that one last little check. Once you look like, all right, that's in the right folder, click upload. And you'll see that it's getting after it. That can take, for this file, it shouldn't really take that long. But depending on, like, you could get some bigger assemblies and it can take, a little bit of time to get up there. So when it does get in there, all we got to do is double click it and it'll open that up for us. Now, if you get confused on that, right down here, there's a little video that tells you how to upload files to Fusion. And that right there, it's kind of a big skill. You know how we spent some time like learning how to rotate and how to move the screen around? Being able to upload files can come in really handy. In the classroom, there are some files, like I just want to focus on assemblies. I don't want to make all the parts, and I don't want my kids to make all the parts. I just want them to learn how to do some joints and put things together. So I'll give them those parts because it kind of depends on the focus of the lesson. So what we're going to do here is we're going to take this and we're just going to kind of start putting some things together. The first thing I'll do, you see this green piece? And how they're all independent of each other, right? But if we look over here, these are all separate components. Okay, there's a cylinder, an arch block, a triangle, a rectangle. They're all separate components, and that's why they move like that. I'm going to take the rectangle here. And notice when I click on it here in the browser, how it kind of highlights it on the screen too. I want to right click on the rectangle and I'm going to ground it. And you notice the push pin here, that little push pin that showed up. So that push pin lets me know that this piece is not going to move now. All the other ones can. And the reason I do that is because I want everything to kind of attach to this. This is going to be kind of the body. For now, we're going to focus on the assembly. So really, we're looking at just this tab right here. And in particular, we're really looking right here. Okay, that's the actual joint command. So if I click there, the joint icon, it gives me position and motion types, right? Another way to get to joint is assemble and then joint. So another way to get there, if I look right next to joint, I see this J. So that tells me I can press the J key and that's a shortcut to get there, okay? So what we'll do is I'll click just the icon because that's what I'm used to. And I'm going to say, let's take this cylinder and let's put it right here in the center of that. All right, so let me repeat that. So I click joint, give me the center of the cylinder, and see all these white points? I could put them anywhere on any of those. But notice how that circle turns on me? Watch this. If I put it there, it don't know what to do, does it? Let's try one final time. So joint, center, and then I'm going to just put it in the center there too. And I'll press OK. Now, if I wanted to, I could give it a motion. I'm not going to do that to this one because it's a cylinder, so you're not going to see it moving. Do it to the next one now. So now I'm going to go back up to joint, and I'm going to say, give me this one now. So I just click the center point of it, and I'm going to click the center of the cylinder. Now, if I don't like that it went in like that, I could come over here and say, flip it. Now that looks really bad. So it went in okay. Notice here's some rotating. There's some offset. So maybe I want it in magical breaking Newton's laws of physics. I just want it suspended in air. Now, this is all in the position tab. All right, but the motion tab, if I click there and go to type, rigid is the default because it's probably the most common. That's where you essentially, it's like you're hot gluing things together. Okay, but if I want it to be a revolute, I'll choose revolute. And it kind of gives me that preview. If I want it to be a slider, now with slider, I can say instead of that axis, how about we go on the X? Or how about we go on the Z? I think that's where we start. Or the Y. All right. What about cylindrical? This would be like a bolt to the nut, right? There's a place for that. Then pin slot, you're not really going to see well here, but that would be like we have, a slotted bolt, really. And then your planer, I consider this more like a hockey puck, like an air hockey table. So picture the puck moving around the table. And then the ball joint. And obviously, some of these defy the laws of physics here. So let's just keep it with like a revolute. And we'll just press OK. And then finally, you know what? I guess I should do something with this triangle. So I'll click joint, but I'm just going to take like one of the edges here. You can zoom in much better on it. And click like right there. And I want to be careful. See how that little blip turns on me, right? I don't want to do that. I want it to stay flat. And then I will come over here and click there. Now it remembers the last one we put in. So the last one we did put in was revolute. But maybe I need it to be like a rigid joint again. And then when I get comfortable with everything, I can just, click OK. The big thing with position is that's where we're going to maneuver this thing into the correct location. And then when we get to the motion tab here, that's where we're going to decide, all right, what kind of motion should this thing have? Is it supposed to slide? Is it supposed to turn? Is it supposed to stay still, right? In other words, is it duct tape or is it WD-40? Which one are we going to use here, right? Before you left, I wanted to give you this parting gift. This is a project I've done with the kids. I really love this project. My son, he's 10 now, but when we started doing this, I think he was about 8, maybe 7. We started making these little puzzle tubes, and so inside he had, and he still does. He has an addiction to M&Ms. So I would stick M&Ms down in here, and if he could get the lid off, then he could have the M&Ms, right? So he would work on these things sometimes for quite a bit. But the nice thing is it taught us a few things about CAD. It taught us how to make some basic shapes, taught us how to make paths, taught us how to make components, right? If you're interested in doing the project, this is a walkthrough video from me to you.
So one thing is after you save a file in your data tab, but anytime you got a file that you're concerned about, you can have the students pull up their version history right here. Mm-hmm. And if it was downloaded, it was created by somebody else and then downloaded, it'll show their name as the original designer for that version 1. And so if they try to be cheeky with it, there will be some other things here. So there's a way to download a file and upload it where that name doesn't populate. I rarely see this. I only saw this once, and I really just found out that the student had a design that populated in about 3 seconds. And so there's a way to download like step files and upload them, and you lose all that metadata. And so if you just look at that version history and give it about 10 seconds of a look, he can figure it out.
That does actually conclude our current webinar, but what I would be forever grateful if you would be willing in our presentation there at the very end, there is a link to a survey. I know that we're really huge on surveys and I'm sorry, but I really am trying to gauge the interest level. I'm very thankful that you all showed up, but I also want to make sure that we're making good use of your time. What I'm kind of envisioning with this is giving you guys some different trainings throughout the year. I know this is just like a very, very introductory level to Fusion. There were some requests out there for like CAM and more about like multi-view drawings. So I want to definitely hit those parts. Our goal, like I said at the beginning, our goal is just to help you get more comfortable and really enjoy teaching. I mean, I love what I do. It's really a great job, but you know, sometimes you get the software and all the other stuff gets in the way of just the interaction with the kids.